All righty. Well, thank you and welcome everyone. This is Frank Bukovic with Fastpath. We are excited to be a platinum sponsor of the first annual Dynamics Com event. Lots and lots of great content been going on and lots more great content to come. Appreciate you taking a few minutes to join us today for our session. As a platinum sponsor, we wanted to share with you a little bit about Fastpath and what we do and a little bit pow, bang, boom, what we're doing to help with security and some of the challenges that exist with Microsoft Dynamics 365 F&O and how Fastpath can really deliver a knockout punch to help you address the security needs you might have. For those of you that don't know me, my name is indeed Frank Bukovic, and I've been a long-time member of the user group communities. Long time working with the Dynamics product, going way back when to Xapta 3.0 for folks out there that might be familiar with that. I'm also a certified internal auditor and certified information systems auditor. So at Fastpath, with the different security solutions we have, I spend a lot of time working with our clients, talking to them about how our solutions meet their audit and compliance needs and developing plans accordingly. Also active on Twitter. And like I said, I'm proud to talk to you today about what we have to offer from a Fastpath perspective around security, audit, and compliance. My partner in crime, actually we're the good guys today, so we're not partners in crime, we're partners in superheroes, is a true superhero, Alex Meyer. For those who don't know him, he's got a great background around the products, around security. And Alex, why don't you spend a couple seconds telling everyone about that great background you have?
Yeah, thanks, Frank, and thank you everybody for joining today. My name is Alex Meyer. I'm the director of Dynamics AX and 365 F&O development at Fastpath. And my background is basically being the technical lead, I guess, for Fastpath in doing everything from security audit compliance across the dynamic space, but focusing in on the AX and F&O side. I have a Microsoft MVP in business applications. I have my own blog that I write on quite frequently, and just from a educational perspective on that. So looking forward to doing the session, and thanks again for everyone joining.
And you're also an author, are you not, Alex? Got a couple books you've written as well?
I do. We have a security audit field manual that we do for different ERPs, one of them being AX and specifically F&O, and it's coming out in its 4th edition this year. So looking forward to that as well.
Wow. Excellent. Good stuff. All right, well, let's get into it. Yeah, baby. Here's what we're going to cover. A little bit about Fastpath. For those of you that are not familiar with us as a company, going to do the proverbial background slides. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of our experiences and what Alex and I have seen working for years and years and years with Dynamics clients and some of the challenges around security, some of the really difficult situations where you need some superhero solutions. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about natively the differences between Fastpath and Dynamics when it comes to security. And then we're just going to jump into our products and hopefully spend most of the time, not with some of these exciting slides, but really diving in and showing you our product in general. We'll have some time at the end for Q&A, but more importantly, we want to know how we can help you address some security needs your company might have when it comes to governance, risk, and control with your F&O D365 environments. So a little bit about Fastpath. We are a software company only. I've been around for going on 17 years now. We have a team of auditors and really smart technical people. They joke with me all the time that means the auditors aren't smart. They're smart too. But we combine that knowledge to develop a solution that really allows you to feel comfortable that the right controls your ERP system might need are indeed in place and automated and make it a little bit easier to either deal with an audit if you happen to be going down that path, but more importantly, even if you're not, just to have the right controls in place. In today's world, security is more important than ever, and you need to have the appropriate controls. We work across a variety of different business software solutions. We're talking today about Dynamics, but as you can see there, lots and lots of different solutions. We work across platform, and we have 1,100 customers, 30 different countries. The only continent we do not have a customer in is Antarctica. Yes, I've been told by my kids it's a continent. So if you happen to have happen to know someone in Antarctica, we'd love to talk to them. We're vertical agnostic, as they say, when it comes to industries. You see there are many different types of clients. We have public and private, large and small, regulated and not, lots and lots of different customers. Some logos up there, we really enjoy having them as customers. But again, 1,100 customers across the world. And the other thing that I think is important to know about Fastpath as well, in addition to the great customer base we have, we work very closely with the different audit partners out there. The Big Four, Protiviti, Grant Thornton, Armanino, RSM. They are not only using the Fastpath solutions out in the field to provide services to their clients around external audit, internal audit, here in the state, Sarbanes-Oxley prep work, security re-architecture projects, but they're also assisting their client to implement our solutions because they understand controls and their client needs those controls that Fastpath provides. So we take a lot of feedback from these audit partners, and it helps us as we further design functionality into our product. And also, it's just great to know they recognize our product as one of the leaders in the industry and a product they can count on to develop services for their company. So you want to be a Fastpath hero. Why should you choose Fastpath? As I mentioned, software and security is all we do. We don't offer services. We have that deep technical and functional and accounting knowledge. We focus exclusively on that. And we also provide free customer service to our customers. So I think that makes us a hero in the space as well. So I think that's important. When we look at companies out there, the solutions they provide, what are they focusing in on? Fastpath is laser focused. There's my Austin Powers reference on security. That's all we do, and software is all we do, no services. I think it presents us with a neat combination to really help your company out and make sure they can be confident the solutions we have are leading edge and staying on top of what's going on in the security, audit, and compliance industries. So with that out of the way, let's take a deep breath. And I tend to talk fast, get excited, especially with these wham bam logos popping up. Let's talk about some of the challenges with security that we see in the Dynamics landscape. First one is, it's obviously a topic that's more important than ever. Privacy, whether it's GDPR, CCPA, everyone's talking about the security of their data. Public or private companies are asking more questions about it. There's expectations of what the security vendors provide, what the software vendors provide, including Microsoft. Security is very, very important. There's some perceptions out there that perhaps all solutions are secure. We're going to talk a little bit why that may not be 100% accurate. There are some gaps there. But ultimately, the current state of security, as the slide says there, is one that elevates the importance of it. Executives, business owners, and the like are talking about security all the time because their business does depend on it. You don't want to become a headline in the Wall Street Journal or in Forbes.com somewhere because you had a security incident, whether it's a fraud incident, a security hack, what have you. Very, very important you address those concerns before they happen. And Fastpath can provide the wham that allows you to do that. But security is not easy. For those of you that have worked on security projects before, whether it's with Exapta 3.0, which my first exposure, Dynamics AX 2012, Dynamics 365 F&O, other types of ERP platforms, security is always a challenge. Many reasons why, and this isn't really specific to Dynamics. I think this is in general when it comes to implementing business software. You might be running Workday or Salesforce or one of those other non-Microsoft products. You still have to watch out for these things. Lots of challenges there that are common, and having a solution like Fastpath can help make it easier to address those challenges. We have that deep technical knowledge. We have that expertise, but we also understand security admin isn't a fun exercise. We designed our solutions to be easier to use. And ultimately, our solutions, I think, fit very well into a broader project plan you might have when you're implementing Dynamics or upgrading Dynamics, and allows you to make it a little bit easier to realize that security can be a strategic enabler if done correctly using a solution like Fastpath. So instead of being a challenge during your implementation, it can actually turn out to be a benefit. If you do security right with the right tools, it really can enable your business to go to the next level and have that confidence that you're doing the right thing, protecting your customer data and your own company data. So with that, let's then talk about how you can go down this path to be a hero and how Fastpath can help you be a superhero. We're going to dig deeper into this in Alex's demos part, but there are some native differences between the Fastpath solution and what Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, and for that matter, Dynamics AX 2012, AX 2009, AX 3.0, 4.0, what they do or what they don't do. Not going to talk about these in depth right now, but just to whet your appetite a little for later in the presentation, we're going to talk about some of those differences around segregation of duties, the approach. We're going to talk about some of the reporting and mitigation differences. We're going to talk about how you handle conflicts when it comes to segregation of duties, workflow, and the like. Lots and lots of areas where there are native differences. Fastpath fills that gap that exists between Dynamics and really what you as a company expect to have in place control-wise in the areas of security, audit, and compliance. We're filling that gap. We're being their superhero for you, but once you implement Fastpath, you become the superhero at your company. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that here in a second when Alex fires up our product. Speaking of product, there's really 4 modules of Fastpath that we offer there that we're going to talk about today. In this deck, we've included some detailed descriptions of each of those modules. They're there to peruse after the fact, but we're going to cover a lot of them as Alex walks through. But we really, all 4 modules help you answer 3 critical questions. So whether it's your CIO, your CISO, your CFO, your CEO, the owners of your company, your board of directors, I guarantee you they want to answer those 3 questions confidently. Who has access to your systems? What are they doing with that access? And where are we vulnerable? Where's the risk to our enterprise? Fastpath can help you do all that with the modules we have that we're going to show you today. And I think it gives the confidence to your company that you can answer those questions, because if you can't, you're running a risk to your organization that the bad guys, the jokers of the world, the penguins of the world, Batman and Robin aren't going to be able to help you out if you don't have solutions like Fastpath in place. And we provide that superhero background to help you beat down the Joker and the Penguin and all those other guys that we used to see growing up that were battling the superheroes. Besides having those modules, though, the one unique thing we do is we work across applications to let you look at segregation duties with multiple ERPs. So while this is a Dynamics conference and we all want to talk Dynamics, there's a chance perhaps your company runs a different solution as well. And you can use that, look at that solution security-wise with Fastpath through our many integrations we have, and look at segregation duties across applications, which is very, very unique. And then we also integrate with different provisioning systems and ticketing systems from a help desk perspective. You see them listed there. That provides the additional power to our solution. More than likely, you might be running ServiceNow or Zendesk for help desk tickets, or maybe you're running SailPoint. You don't have to feel like you have siloed systems when it comes to security and provision new users. Fastpath can integrate with those systems, sharing data back and forth, linking the 2 together to ultimately give your IT folks and your control folks confidence that you have a good audit trail. And more importantly, just good controls in place going from one system to the other, and that Fastpath integration provides that. So with that being said, I'm going to hand things over to Alex here in a second. As I mentioned in the slide deck, we have a couple of slides that talk about high level some of the functionality around our different modules. Here's the SOD and security access review modules. We're going to cover that with a big boom here in a second. Our Audit Trail module, which is tracking changes to critical data. Alex is going to cover that to show you how you can really zap and make sure you don't have any gaps there with knowing who's changing what and tracking that. Our Identity Manager module gives you a better way for the security admins listening to this session to provision security the right way the first time, and don't have you pulling out your hair trying to deal with setting up new users or change existing users. It's got a real power to it, and we're going to talk about that. And then the 4th module we're going to cover is the newer module for Fastpath. That's our Security Designer. It's specifically for F&O, and it really makes your life easier just administering security. Got a neat little feature where you can upload task recordings into it, and it'll tell you exactly for that task you just recorded what security is required, and then even give you the ability to then go out, look at what security you have set up in your own instance, and provision additional security to allow you to create users and roles to do what you just recorded in task recording. If that is not a POW and a wow, I don't know what is. So we're going to show you all of that here in the Fastpath lineup of superheroes: the SOD module, the Audit Trail module, the Identity Manager module, and the Security Design module. We're going to show you all those superheroes so you can answer those 3 critical questions. You don't want to be answering the bat phone when your CEO calls up and says, who has access to our systems? And there's no answer on the other end of the phone. Or when he calls up and says, what do they do with that access? Or she calls up and says, where are we vulnerable? If you can't answer those 3 questions when the bat phone rings, your company definitely needs to spend some more time addressing what's going on from a security audit compliance perspective. So I'm going to stop talking fast, and I'm going to let my colleague Alex take things over here and show us exactly what's going on with our 4 modules here, starting with the SOD module. So with that, Alex, I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and let you take over here, my friend.
Thanks, Frank. And like Frank mentioned, we're going to be walking through the Fastpath tool today. So the Fastpath tool is a cloud SaaS-based solution. It sits outside of Dynamics 365 for finance and operations, or any other ERP or CRM solution you integrate with. And then we create connection points in those individual systems. So today we're going to be looking specifically at an environment where we have it connected to F&O, but the look and feel of this is going to be exactly the same, whether you're connecting to F&O, AX 2012, AX 2009, another Dynamics product, SAP, Oracle, what have you. The UI for this is going to look very, very similar throughout those. Obviously, the reports are going to be different. The data behind it is going to be different, but the look and feel is going to be the same. When you first log into Fastpath here, you're going to be presented with this dashboard or overview screen, which is going to give you information about the environment or environments that you're connected to. And then on the left-hand side is the modules listed out by what Frank kind of went through during his piece. So we're going to basically start at the top and kind of work our way down. And Frank will kind of guide a little bit of the discussion here as well. But we'll go ahead.
So Alex, real quick. So as we go down there, when it comes to F&O, integrating F&O is super, super simple, isn't it? This is running in the cloud in Microsoft Azure, like we talked about on the Fastpath Azure account. All you got to do to integrate is what?
Yeah, so the integration process is obviously going to be slightly different based on the ERP, but for F&O, it's very straightforward. We have a deployable package that gets installed in your environment. That gives us the ability to connect from our application into your application and create that secure connection. It's the way that Microsoft, wants any third party or ISV connecting. It's the same way that we do as well.
Exactly. Good. All right. So let's jump into it then. Said you go down the list. Let's talk about access reviews first.
Yep.
We want to know what our users have access to. We want to know what different roles have access to. Everything Alex is going to show you here, when he pulls up a quote report, is handled the same way inside the Fastpath solution. All reports can be scheduled for review. All reports can be exported out to PDF or Excel. And the scheduled reviews, you can then capture the electronic sign off on all the reports as well. If you're worried about controls in that area and showing evidence to your auditors, if you have to worry about that, about the reviews taking place, it's all inside the system. You don't have to print things off. You don't have to pull things out of email, track down spreadsheets. But let's talk first about user access. I know a lot of people want to know what users have access to what. Alex, show us how a Fastpath report will pull up that information and how easy it is to drive that information.
Absolutely. So one of the things you're going to notice, especially with our access reviews and segregation and duties pieces, is that every report is going to, or we're going to be able to run reports both from the user side as well as the role side. And then we're going to have an overview report as well as a more detailed report. So you can first run this overview report to give you more of a high level look at where users have access to certain objects. And then that detailed report is actually going to show you how that user is getting that access. So we have some pre-filtering that we can do for this type of report here, where you can come in, you can select an individual company or legal entity within the organization. You can select an individual user you want to run this for, an access type. So in this case, we'll do a menu item display, and then you can actually go down to the object level if you want. In this case, what this is going to do is basically saying based on all of the roles that the Alicia user is assigned, I want to see all of the menu item displays this user has access to within the Contoso Consulting Company. So I want to go ahead and run this report. We're going out and saying, okay, show me where this user has this access. And so we're able to come in and say this Alicia user has access to this budget control perch table error object menu item display is at a delete level. And even though we ran this for one individual company, in this case, the Contoso Consulting Company, we're doing some additional business logic on the back end to see, is the role that this user is getting this access from actually restricted to the Contoso Consulting Company, or does she have this access across all companies? And in this case, she has that access across all companies. And when we click on that row, over on the right-hand side, we're actually going to be able to see how the user is getting this access. So again, we're going to be able to show not only what access the user has, but then how the user is getting this access, the roles, duties, and privileges of how the user is getting that access. Like Frank mentioned, every report within Fastpath has the same type of functionality built around it. You can do things like exporting the report into CSV, Excel, and PDF formats. You can sign off a report and for a signature log. So if a user is supposed to come in, review the output of a report, actually sign off on it, we can capture the user, the date and time, any notes that they include, and then the report itself. And then finally, you can actually schedule this report to be sent out. So the first thing we would have to do is quickly name this report. And then the next thing we can do is actually schedule this report. So we pick the format that we want this report to be delivered in. Maybe the Allison user here is supposed to get this report in a PDF format, and she's supposed to get that monthly. And we can set this up on the first of the month to kick off on September. And at this date and time, right, this a report would be generated and delivered to this user's email automatically. And then because we have it set up to be monthly, every month the report would be generated again and delivered to that user. And you can do that with every report again within Fastpath that we're going to see today.
So Alex, that's really good stuff. Going down the object level is a real POW that we tell you exactly where it's coming from. Your IT people, your Dynamics experts may or may not always know how to find that. If they do, it takes them a long time. That's some real POW. Let's pull up the same view of that report, but in the detailed version to show them where the real bang's at then.
Yep. So if we run that same report that we were just looking at, but from a more detailed perspective now, you're going to notice that the right-hand pane, that access details area goes away. And now all of that information that was in there, the role, the sub-role, the duty, the privilege information is brought into the report itself. So the report is obviously going to generate more, be a much larger report this time. But we're going to be able to, again, go down and be able to see now this Elite user is assigned the budget clerk role. It's assigned this duty and this privilege. It's getting access to this budget planning configuration at a read level. And then if we scroll over, we actually get more information as well. We can see in this case, it has access to all companies. And then this is another place where we add in a little bit more additional information is we actually go down and say, what's the license type that's required for this particular access as well? So in this case, this read access to this object is requiring a team member license. So we show that as well.
Excellent. And again, many Fastpath reports have the standard view and the detailed view. There'll be no question then knowing exactly where this is coming from when you pull up this type of report with that type of detailed view. Briefly show it on the role side. That's the user side of it. Role side looks very similar, just sort of replacing the idea of a user access with the role access, but show us one of those reports real quick.
Yeah, so obviously role access is we're moving down a level from the user going down to the role. Again, we're going to be able to select the object type like we did. In this case, we're going to select the accountant role here, and then we can go ahead and submit this. And we're going to be able to see that in this case, the accountant role has access to this asset hub object to menu item display at a delete level again, right? And so we can see that information as well. You can run this report for multiple roles. Obviously, one additional thing here is we do allow you to copy roles from a user. So if you want to be able to say, what is, what roles does this particular user have, and I want to look at the role access of those roles, you can do that as well.
Great stuff. Great stuff. All right. So, and again, that same report's available in a detailed format as well. We don't need to pull that up. Folks probably get the idea.
Absolutely.
So easy to look at user and role access at the object level. You got to go to the object level, folks. If you're not going to the object level, you can't confidently answer those three questions we talked about before. You got to go down the object level. That is the ultimate source of where the access is being granted for user or roles. Let's jump into, Alex, you talked briefly about licensing. We got a couple licensing reports. Let's cover those now. I think are they in this section?
Yep, they are.
Did I spin the wheel correctly? Yes, I did. Let's briefly talk about the licensing reports that come out of the box of Fastpath as well.
Yeah, so AX and F&O are kind of unique in the scenario where your licensing is tied directly to security. And so if you aren't treating both of those as looking at both of those when you're making security changes, if you're not looking at licensing right, they can really come back to bite you when you're coming up on your renewals with Microsoft. And so what you want to make sure is that you know where your security is at and what licensing is required for that. And so we have a number of different licensing reports from a role, duty, and privilege perspective, as well as a user side, and in the standard and detailed reports as well to give you that additional information. But we're going in and showing using the same type of methodology that Microsoft is using, looking at the entry point access and the view and maintain user licensing parameters and saying, okay, based on the access that these roles have in this case, what license is going to be required. And then for those that may know, in October of last year, Microsoft came out with some new licensing SKUs. They broke apart their licensing. And so we're actually showing, in this case, what licensing of the new kind is also going to be required as well. On the right-hand side of this, what we do is we go a little bit further and actually show you a numerical breakdown of how this licensing is actually being implemented for these individual roles. So we're showing you the individual accesses for each license type that is going to be required. And this just gives you the ability to come in and see, are there any places where I could potentially make changes to my security and therefore save licensing costs? So for example, we have this accounts payable centralized payment clerk role. right? It only has 7 accesses at an operations level. If I can remove those 7 accesses from that role, then any user assigned to that role is only going to require an activity license and instead of the operations level license, right? And so you can start doing some licensing assessments and try to save your company large chunks of money by going in and looking at these licensing reports and then taking action on those.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. Microsoft has all the data now for those folks in the cloud of F&O to know what licenses you're using. They obviously have the data to know what licenses you're paying for. You don't want to get caught in a license audit. The Fastpath tool here will help you identify where maybe you're over provisioned licensing wise and give you a chance to correct it. So good stuff. All right, let's jump now down into segregation of duties, Alex.
Yep.
Hopefully a lot of folks are already familiar with that. The concept of someone shouldn't have access, for example, to create a new vendor and also post payments to vendors. So the Fastpath solution provides you the ability to look for segregation duty conflicts, starting with a rule set that is full of rules. I think I have close to 100 rules now in our SOD rule set. Out of the box, Microsoft natively has a big zero, big donut of rules. Second thing is our solution here, when it does do SOD conflict analysis, it goes down back to that object level. Talked about how important that was to go down the object level already. It's just as important here. Microsoft out of the box natively goes down to the duty level. That's not deep enough. That's not going to be able to answer the bat phone correctly. So Alex, briefly walk us through the rule set and then show us what a couple little reports to look like from a conflict perspective when it comes to segregation of duties.
Yep, absolutely. So like Frank was mentioning, this is normally where we start when we start going through SOD is a conflict listing report. Because this is the rule set that Fastpath provides as part of the deployment, right? So there's nothing you have to do to get this set up. You get 95 rules out of the box from Fastpath, and this is being generated from our internal audit team, as well as feedback from our audit partners and customers over the last 15 plus years that we've been around. And so this is kind of giving you that starting point that you can get in and say, where am I sitting at based on industry best practice? And then you can fine tune these to fit your particular business needs. But like Frank mentioned, again, our conflicts are built on top of what we call business processes. And in Fastpath, a business process is just a group of objects that allow you to perform a task or process. So again, we're going down to that object level, that menu item, that table, that entity service operation level to say, where do users and roles have access to these objects? And then what processes in the system does that allow you to do? And then based on that, we basically take those business processes and put them in conflict with each other. And so that gives us the ability to go down to that level of granularity to make sure from a false positive and false negative perspective, we're removing some of those that you would get for if you were using the Microsoft SOD, because we're going down to that lower level of detail, but then also make it easy for business users and financial users to understand what conflicts exist from that as well. And so the rule set gives you is the rule set that we use when we're looking at different reports for role conflicts and user conflicts later on. And so this is where you can come in, you can utilize the out of the box rule set from Fastpath, and you can add and remove these as needed, right? So you can, if you have, a very highly restrictive environment where you need to add additional rules, you can do that. If you want to remove rules, you can do that. You can modify these, right? You can make this kind of your own. The platform is very flexible on how you want to go about that. Once you actually get the rule set up, then you jump into and actually want to be able to run that against the user access and role access reports we were just looking at. And so that's exactly what the user conflict and role conflict reports allow you to do. So you can come in, and again, you're able to select a company you want to run this for. We can select a user. In this case, we'll go ahead and select the April user, and we'll use that default rule set. And so this case, we're saying, based on all of the access the April user has within the Contoso Consulting Company, I want to run that against the rule set that we just looked at and see where this user has conflicts based on their access. And so you can see I went very quickly able to generate that, and now I'm able to go through and see where does this user actually have this particular access and the conflicts based on that access. So an easy one here that we sometimes pick on is the journal lines and vendors. This user has access to edit or modify journal lines and edit or modified vendors, and that's going to be considered a conflict within our rule set here. We have a description of the conflict that's going to describe why this is a particular conflict. We're going to have a risk level. Out of the box, the risk level is always going to be medium, and then you can modify that, and that gives you a way to categorize your conflicts, and you can see the company that this conflict resides in. If we go ahead and click on this row over here on the right-hand side, we're actually going to show you how the user is getting access to this particular conflict. So we're going to show you both sides of the conflict and actually be able to, again, show you the roles, duties, and privileges of how the user is getting this access. And so we can see in this case, this user is getting access through the accounts payable payment clerk, the accounts payable clerk role, and the accounts payable manager roles if we keep scrolling through here, right? And so we can see it's a combination of roles in this case that is giving the user this access to this particular conflict. So when you run this report there and generate these conflicts, right, there are a couple different things we can do to actually help mitigate these conflicts, right? We could go and we could modify the roles that the user is assigned, right, through something like Identity Manager and actually go in and remove one or more of the roles that are causing the conflict. We go into something like Security Designer and actually modify the security that this user's that the roles have that the user is assigned, or we can come back in and say, we know the user has this access, we know it's causing this conflict, but we have this process control or mitigation we want to put in place. And that's what the status column is. This is the status of the user mitigation for this particular conflict. So if we open this up, this actually allows us to come in and actually provide mitigations right within the grid itself or controls to this particular conflict. And so we can come in and we can go in and actually provide the controls from a control library in this case. So we can actually come in, we've uploaded some controls in this case, and we can come in and just say, maybe we're going to use dual approvals and manager sign off to actually mitigate this particular conflict. We can select a status for this conflict. And so we can maybe propose this and have somebody else review it. And then we can provide any notes we want to include in this case. And then if this conflict exists in other companies or legal entities and we want to reuse our work, we can absolutely do that as well. And so if we go ahead and mitigate the conflict here, that's actually going to go out and provide that mitigation for this conflict. And then the status column is actually going to change from new to proposed. And so we know that we've actually provided a mitigation for that. And so now we've tied the mitigation to the conflict itself, and we can, continue on looking at other conflicts in that case.
Yeah, good stuff. And again, that's on the user side, Alex. You do the same thing on the role side. And again, both those reports also have a detailed view as well. So again, we've taken the time to figure out exactly where all the functional details, the security details are inside Dynamics, identify those conflicts at the object level, present that information back to you in the report format that can be reviewed, and then you can mitigate it accordingly. So you don't have to worry about exactly where is this coming from. Am I sure where it's coming from? Fastpath done all the legwork there to be the superhero for you.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So that's SOD. Let's jump into Audit Trail. One thing that's amazed me, Alex, as you've been going through everything here, everything on the screen is changing quickly, like boom, boom, boom. I'm not seeing a lot of degradation performance-wise when it comes to working through the Fastpath solution here in the Microsoft Azure cloud. When it comes to Audit Trail, we have lots of people that say, well, geez, what about the database log in Dynamics? Can't we just use that? And then they come back and say, well, we tried to use it and realized it's a real performance hog. Talk a little bit about why Audit Trail, one, allows you to track changes to data the right way, before and after values and reporting, but also two, why you don't see performance challenges using the Fastpath Audit Trail for tracking those critical changes.
Yeah. So really, when we talk to customers or prospects about utilizing the database log, the first thing that we always kind of describe is that the database log was built from as a debugging tool or a troubleshooting tool, right? It really wasn't meant for an audit tool to be turned on and left on for long periods of time. Audit Trail, when we designed it from the ground up, was built to be turned on and left on. And the whole idea of it is that the end user should never know that Audit Trail is turned on. So there should not be a degradation of service enough where the end user knows that something is turned on and tracking. And so the idea of Audit Trail in this case, or the methodology, I guess, that we use for tracking is different from the database log. In fact, the database log doesn't have to be turned on at all for our Audit Trail to work. We're actually using the eventing system that Microsoft provides and listening at the table level for events as they occur, and then determining if we need to capture those changes based on the templates that you have turned on to select. So that's where I was, or where I came to here is the tracking templates. These tracking templates are basically the core of Audit Trail. These are basically what they are table and field combinations that you want to track. So we have a number of out-of-the-box tracking templates, and then you can come in and you can create your custom ones as well. So, for example, you may not know the table and fields that you need to capture for address changes in the system, but you need to capture changes to addresses. And so we have an out-of-the-box template to help with that. And then obviously, again, if you want to go in and modify those a little bit further, you can absolutely do that. Any table that shows up in the AOT can be captured via our audit trail. So it doesn't matter if it's coming from Microsoft, third party, what have you. You basically create a tracking template for it. You select which fields you would like to capture, as I'm going to here. And then from there, you're going to be able to apply that tracking template into Fastpath or to finance and operations, and it'll start capturing that data. One thing that's unique about Audit Trail is that the data that's being captured is always stored within F&O. So Fastpath never looks at this data, and that's simply because we don't want to be ever looking at what could be potentially sensitive information. So on the screen here, you can see you can go down to the field level, actually go down the event type on the field level to determine what you would like to capture. In this case. And so you can see that you very easily can go in and set this up on what you'd like to capture. Once you actually go through and actually apply those tracking templates, the data you're going to get from it is going to look very similar to what I'm pulling up here. You're going to be able to see the date and time that the change occurred on, the table and column that the change occurred on, the event type, a description of the change. So you're going to be able to see information about the change itself. In this case, you're going to be able to see information about the purchase order. You're going to be able to see all the new values, who modified it, and the company that it was modified in. And I actually have a little bit better example. If you give me just a second here, I can go and show changes to vendors that we have. And you're going to be able to see the actual vendor account name here, all the new value, who modified it, and the company that is modified in, right? So you're going to be able to get all that information about any of the changes that you're capturing. And then we have a number of out-of-the-box reports here as well to help with you around different areas of the system that we normally see users having to track. And then you can also create your own custom reports as well to fit your particular business needs.
Yeah, that's a big wow. That's a big bang. Yeah, that makes it so much easier for these different data owners that want to know when vendors are changing their bank account numbers. You don't have to go figure out where all that data is at. Just turn on the template, build the template if it's not there, and boom, schedule a report, save the report, and schedule for someone to review.
Absolutely.
Good stuff there. And again, doesn't affect your performance and doesn't use the database log. All right, heading down the home stretch here to make sure we get you the right answers to answer when the commissioner calls on that back phone. Let's briefly talk about Identity Manager and how you can provision new users or make changes to existing users inside Dynamics with this module, Alex.
Yeah, so Identity Manager is your compliant user provisioning tool. It's allowing you to create, modify, or terminate users with a workflow around it. So there's really two parts to Identity Manager. There's a request side and approval side. The request side allows you to go in and request that a change occurs to the user. And then there's an approval side to actually approve whether that request should actually go through or not. So at the very least, you need at least two people, and you need somebody to request a change and one to approve it. But you can have a very complex approval structure depending on the request that's coming in. So we'll go through and walk through a modify request really quick just to show what this looks like. I'll go ahead and we'll pick a user that I know that I want to modify here. So this is actually going out and querying your F&O users. So in this case, I can select this Ellen user. Now I can go in, and what the system is doing now is just determining what applications this user has access to. If you had multiple applications actually hooked up to Fastpath, right, you could use this to be your one true source of identity management across those systems. Because we only have finance and operations connected here, right, it immediately dumps me into the finance and operations area, into the user information screen. So I can go ahead and start modifying the user if I would like. So if I want to, I can modify the actual user object itself. But on the next screen is where I can actually modify the roles that are assigned to this user. And again, this is where we're able to go in on the right side and see what roles are currently assigned to the user. On the left-hand side are the roles that you can assign to the user, right? And so this is where we can start making changes. So this is, maybe this user is not going to be a manager anymore. Maybe they're switching departments in this case and going to be an accountant now. And so I can go ahead and make that change. And again, this is where we have other options, again, where you can copy roles from a user. We have things like role templates where you can build up a combination of multiple roles that you want to apply. And then obviously here as well, this is where you can do your company restrictions. So if you want to go down and actually restrict the companies that this role is assigned, you can do that as well. When we go into the next screen here, this is where we talk about effective dates. So effective dates are allow you to or give you the ability to have this event occur sometime in the future. Maybe you don't want this revoke and this grant to occur immediately when the request is approved. Maybe you want it to occur some point in the future. So maybe this user is actually going to start September 1st with their new role. And so we can actually set this up to revoke the manager role on September 1st and grant the accountant role on September 1st. And you'll notice that these go down to the minute level. So if you want to, grant a role for a very short amount of time, you can absolutely do that. So if you have like a firefighter assignment or a user needs elevated privilege to go and do something within the system, you can grant the role in the start date and revoke the role in the end date, right? And so this effective dates gives you that ability to get all of your approvals for this user assignment done before this user actually needs them in the system. On the next screen is what we call our risk analysis. The risk analysis, what it does is it does a before and after comparison of the user's access and runs it against the segregation of duties and access reviews pieces that we looked at earlier. And so it actually is going to show you, what's the potential risk impact of the changes that I'm making. And in this case, because the accountant role has inherent segregation and duties conflicts to it, you're actually going to notice that I'm increasing the number of conflicts for this user because I'm adding that role to the user. And the same thing from business processes and critical access groups are just other grouping object groupings that we allow for as well. But you can come in and you can get detailed information, right? If you want to go and actually see what conflicts that I add for this user, right? Because of the changes that I made, right? You're able to go in and look at that as well. So that's from the risk analysis side. This just gives you the ability to see that risk and the impact of the changes that you're making. You can include any notes you want to include with the request. And then on the summary screen, you get an overview of the request itself. So you can see that I'm granting the accountant role on 9/1 and revoking the manager role, right? And so this is, again, where I could link a ticket like Frank mentioned earlier. We have integrations with ServiceNow, Jira, and Zendesk natively, and then you can also link a custom ticket as well. So if you want to link that ticket out for this change, you can absolutely do that. If I were to hit finish, that would actually end the request side, and then the approval side would kick in. The approval side is actually going to look at the parameters of the request, and based on the rules that you have within the application is going to determine which user or users have to approve that request. So you can do an approval rule for a number of different parameters of the request itself. You can do it by the role that's being requested, the user that's requesting it, SOD level. So if you have a high-risk SOD, you can do it by request action, which is where new users or modify users go a different way, or by the application itself. And so you can go in and basically set up these different parameters or different rules that you want, looking at the parameters of the request. And then you can actually have either a user or users have to approve that based on your approval rule groups that you're setting up. And so you can actually come in, see if I can find one quickly here that has multiple levels. So in this case, we would need level 1 to be completed before level 2 kicks in. So if we have a scenario where the AP managers group has to approve the request, myself and Andy Snook would have to approve the level 1 request first before it goes to Jeff Solberg to actually approve at that level 2, right? And so you can see you can add multiple levels, you can have multiple approvers, you can have it be only some approvers of each level, or some users of each level have to approve it, right? You can get very complex in how you want that to be done. And then finally, once the system determines the request itself or who needs to approve that request, those users are going to get an email that's going to have a link to a screen that looks very similar to what we're going to be looking at here when this loads up, but it's going to give you an overview of the request itself. You're going to be able to see who put in the request, the affected user, the date and time the request was actually put in. If there's a ticket, it's actually going to show it. In this case, there's a ServiceNow ticket out for this. You can see that we're, in this case, creating a user, Tom, within F&O. We're going to be assigning a number of different roles here with some legal entity restrictions. And we actually have the ability in each case to go down to the line level and do approvals in that case as well. And then you, over here on the right-hand side, you're going to be able to see the conflicts, critical access, and business process changes, just like you could in the risk analysis within the request itself. And then any notes that included any approvals that have been required and any that have been submitted. All right, so you're going to get all that information. And then if I was one of the approvers of the request, there would be a green or green and red buttons up here that I could either approve the request or revoke it, or I could go down to each individual line level and do that as well. So with this, you have the ability to come in and actually approve or deny it. And then at that point, then you also have their entire history of it, where you can see the request history for your auditors as well, right? Because all of these requests are being documented and stored in the system. And so if you need to go back, 6 months and say, hey, what was that? What did that request look like? How did that actually look? You can actually do that as well.
So all that paperwork you had to track down, maybe through emails or help desk tickets or who knows what else, HR files.
Yep.
All contained right there for the history of all those either new requests or updating existing users. Okay.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Let's briefly touch on Security Designer, Alex. I know we want to leave some time for Q&A here.
Yep.
First three modules you saw were designed to provide additional controls that might natively be missing in Dynamics, or to enhance the controls that are there to make them more automated. This tool has a focus of just making security easier to administer, starting with being able to look at models, run simulations. I talked about uploading task recordings. Just give us a really high level, 2-3 minutes, and maybe show one quick example of how uploading a task recording and what that can do for you. Absolutely.
So Security Designer has two the main function of it, right, is to help make security management and design easier. The other part to it is actually, helping you through that design process through those task recordings that Frank mentioned. And so what we can do here within Security Designer is we create what we call security models. And these are, for lack of a better term, a sandbox or a test area where you can actually go in and make changes to security and then see the impact of those changes, both from an SOD and a licensing impact before you actually publish those out. And so what we can do is within each of these security models, I can go to a role, duty, or privilege level and actually go in and start making changes. So the one thing to note is that any changes that I'm making right now before I publish them out are only within Fastpath. So I'm not modifying live security just within F&O. This is all being done within Fastpath, and then we can actually publish it out later. But in this case, when we go to the role level, we're going to be able to make a live call out to F&O and be able to get all of the roles within that organization, and then the duties, privileges, tables, and sub-roles that they're assigned. And now I can go in and start making changes to them, right? I can go to the duties that are assigned to this role, and I can start making changes to them and simply, maybe I want to assign this duty to this role. Maybe I want to revoke it, right? And so we try to make this process as easy as possible with a toggle in this case. The same thing would happen at a privilege level. At the table level, you're going to be able to actually see the create, read, update, and delete permissions, right? Just like you would within the user interface as well. So you can come in and start making changes to them as well from that perspective. You also have the ability to create new roles, duties, and privileges at any point in time. You can clone a role, duty, or privilege, which is what has happened here for this accountant UK role, right? So you can come over here, go to clone, whatever the current settings are for that role, duty, or privilege, it'll clone it. You can simulate what would happen if you remove or delete a role, duty, or privilege, right? So what happens if I removed this role from the system? And then finally, we have this idea of affected objects. So one of the things that I heard quite often is that, users and end users were making changes to security, but they had no idea what the impact of that change was and what objects in the system they were impacting. Now with affected objects, we're actually going out and showing you the objects that would be impacted. In this case, at a role level, we're going to show you the users that were impacted, right? So if I make a change to this accountant role, I'm going to impact all these users because they're assigned to that role. But if I go down to a privilege level and I run that same functionality, it's actually going to show me not only the role, but it's going to show me the duty, role, and user that's actually impacted, right? And so I can come into an individual privilege here, and if I make a change to this privilege, I'm impacting this duty, these two roles, and all of these users because of the hierarchy-based structure of security within F&O and AX, right? And so I get an overview of what I'm actually impacting based on that, this type of functionality. At the privilege level, I can also come in and create a new privilege just like I could at a duty or role level, but there's an additional option here that allows you to create a privilege from a task recording. And this is where the feature that Frank was talking about comes into play, is we have this idea where, Task recordings are native pieces of functionality within F&O, normally used for testing or documentation purposes, but we can reutilize those to actually grab the securable objects out of those and analyze them to see what objects are actually in those. And so that's where we have a separate area over here where you can actually take your task recordings that you've created, upload them into Fastpath, and actually get an overview of what was inside them. So I went in and actually recorded myself creating a vendor. The first thing I can do here is once I upload it into Fastpath, I can see the objects that were utilized during that process. So I can see the individual menu items. In this case, I'm able to see the access type that's required for each of these. And in that, because I can get the access type, I can also get the license that's required. So I know that if I want a user to come in and be able to create a vendor through the process that I recorded, it's going to require a team member license. So from here, I have the ability, I can go out and create a new privilege from this at any point in time, or I can come in and I can actually say which roles, duties, and privileges in the system actually already have access to this creative vendor process, and therefore maybe I don't have to go in and create a new one from that. And so you're going to be able to see there's 3 objects in here. Any role in this case that has 3 objects is going to allow me to perform that process. But for example, the vendor admin external only has 2 objects, so it doesn't have access to the Vend table list page at a create level, and therefore doesn't have that the ability to do that. Yeah, so from here you have the ability to go in and be able to run at a role duty or privilege level, be able to see which current security actually gives you access to this task recording. And so it just gives you a way to help develop your security if you're going through and trying to do that from a least privilege perspective. Back on the security model screen, we have this, again, you'll notice this run analysis piece. This is exactly what we were talking about with Identity Manager. We have this in the F&O or the Security Designer side as well. What this is doing is, again, doing that before and after comparison of where your security was at, and then looking at the SOD and licensing perspective of that, both from a role and a user side. And so we're able to come in and actually see that process and see the impact of the changes that we're making from within our security designer, right? So we're actually able to come in and see the changes to role conflicts, role critical access, role business process, same thing from the user side, and then the licensing reports as well. So we're able to come in from a role on a user side and see the impact of the licensing, because again, remember that your licensing is tied directly to security. So if you were to come in, make a change to security, and all of a sudden you're requiring 50 or 100 new operations users, you probably want to make sure that the changes that you're making to security are valid. And so we just give you that insight before you actually make your changes. Finally, the last step is we can actually publish those changes out. Obviously, everything that we've done up until this point is done within Fastpath. Once we actually publish those changes out, they become live security within F&O. So that's just a quick overview of Security Designer. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it back to Frank for some Q&A and follow-up.
Great, thanks, Alex. That's really good stuff. A lot of good POWs, a lot of good bangs there, especially the Security Designer. It's certainly something that we have lots and lots of customers find quite helpful for just administering security. Just the 2 final slides here. If you're getting the bat phone, if it's calling, that phone's ringing on your desk, and you're getting questions about what you see on the screen here, Fastpath is your solution. Maybe your CIO is asking about SOX compliance. Maybe your CISO is saying, where do we stand with IT general controls? When you're answering the bat phone, they're asking about these items, Fastpath is your solution to help you out there. And then finally, the back of this deck, Alex and I have included a couple helpful links to security resources. This is not about Fastpath specifically, but just about managing security better, administering security better, give you personally that POW, that bang, that wow, that what you can do yourself in your F&O environment. Take advantage of those links there. Lots and lots of good content Alex has on his blog as well. And then certainly, if you want to follow up with us, we appreciate your time today. There's our contact information. You want a copy of the slides as well, you may get them from there as well. So appreciate your time today. And with that, we will thank you and have a good rest of your Dynamics Con. Again, Fastpath's been proud to sponsor this as a platinum sponsor, the first annual Dynamics Con. Hopefully we wowed you a little bit in our presentation today. All righty there. I hope we enjoyed that. Alex and I are available now in the conference chat to answer any questions you might have. So please type them in and we'll go through them.